Yeah, hi, I'm Frank Haney. I'm the Winnebago County Board Chairman. I want to thank 662 Online for inviting me in to talk about my time in public service. Currently, I'm wrapping up my term as Winnebago County Board Chairman. I'm a Rockford kid, born and raised here, as is my wife. Now I'm raising three kids in our community, and I had to get off the sidelines and get involved in public service because I didn't like what I was seeing in our community politics. And with that, I won as an outside candidate for chairman in 2016. And one of the most epic stories, I believe, in our local political history has unfolded, where there's been an effort to stop reform and change in Winnebago County. So in 2016, in November, I get elected chairman, kind of as the first outside chairman elected in not just recent history, but I believe in the history of county politics. And there was some rumblings over that. There was a lot of excitement and also a lot of rumblings over that, and we stirred things up a little bit. What is fascinating to me is how a community of our size and really with the greatness and potential of our community, sometimes we find a way to stub our own toe. And what was amazing to me is that after a 14-month campaign, on the eve of being elected chairman, we started with folks who they couldn't win on election night and knew that, and so they decided they were going to fundamentally change the job that the community was about to elect me to do. Since October of 2016, there has been more than 14 attempted changes to the job of chairman that over 60,000 folks voted for me to do. Let me just say this, is that whether you voted for me or you didn't vote for me in 2016, there is something that I think we need to back up and look at and look in the mirror as a community. Number one, do we want our citizens to be in charge of government ultimately? And I think the answer needs to be yes. We need our citizens to be active in the election process, voting for candidates and ideas that they think are going to help our community. If they sit on the sidelines and don't vote, don't get engaged, then transformation of our community is not possible, period. Number two is we need people to vote for particular people, specific people, to do a specific job for a very specific period of time. And the job that I was elected to has now fundamentally changed from being essentially the chief elected official of our administration of Winnebago County, ran and won on a reform agenda, to being not even really represented on the organizational chart. And what has happened is that any functional role of the position of chairman has been eliminated by a faction on the Winnebago County Board in response to their guy not winning, in response to an occasional policy disagreement. Here's what's fascinating to me is that fast forward a couple of years to October of 2018, I was the only elected official in the state to be recognized by Transform Illinois, the most respected good government agency or good government organization in the state of Illinois, for their reform award that they give out to a local elected official. I got it in October of 18. There had already been multiple attempts to change the chairman job. A month or two later, major changes came, basically eliminating me from the organizational chart. So on the eve of getting an award for reform in local government, which is a very hard thing to do, is reform local government in any community, there were continued and amplified movements to kind of remove me from the position that the community elected me to. I'm leaving. I'm not on the ballot in November. I'm not going to run for a position, although I believe I would win. I'm not going to run for re-election for a position that could change drastically every 2 weeks. I want the focus to be on issues and on moving our community forward. And so I made a decision not to run once it became clear that, based on the political persuasion, based on the politics of a person elected by the people, by the boss of Winnebago County government, and how violently and ferociously it could be changed from week to week even, that's not a good investment of my time. However, there is going to be a next chairman and a next chairman after that. And if we're going to allow as a community individuals or political groups to fundamentally reverse election outcomes, ignore the will of voters, essentially give the finger give the finger to the voters of Winnebago County when they're overtaxed. I think that's unacceptable to me as a kid who grew up in this community, regardless of who the chairman is. And if what I would have preferred to see happen is that if there were going to be discussion of changes, that you discuss it and you take it out to the boss, the voters of Winnebago County. When you look at 14 attempted changes to anything in such a short period of time, it creates incredible dysfunction and division. And, in my first 2 years, the board approved 99% plus of what our administration brought to our board. Were there a couple of notable disagreements over policy? Yes, and I think that's absolutely okay. If 1% disagreement makes you 100% enemies, that's a real problem in our politics right now. We got to fix that. When you go back and you look at things, we cannot have elected officials having their job essentially eliminated by other elected officials in the middle of the job they were elected to do by our citizens. And so we get back to a situation, what's the solution? On the ballot on November 3rd, there is the referendum question around Winnebago County going to a county executive form of government. Right now, the Winnebago County Board can create a position that is almost eliminated if they're mad at the chairman. But think about the opposite of that. What if they really like the person? What if the person does everything to curry favor with the board? Well, then they could give them more duties than even the average county executive. So on the ballot, November 3rd, voters are encouraged to vote yes for the county executive. That would prevent and it would close the loophole for the county board of making major midterm changes to another countywide elected official's job. They cannot do that for the sheriff. They cannot change the state's attorney's job. They cannot change the chief judge's job. They cannot change the county clerk's job, the auditor's job, or even the coroner's job. So allowing them to change the chief elected official of the county administration's job midterm because of a political retaliation, because they couldn't win at the ballot box, I think that's a very dangerous precedent. We wanted to bring this solution to the community, and some on the county board tried to block this even being a question before the voters of Winnebago County. Board member Paul Arena, board member Jim Webster, board member Dave Fiducia stood in the way, and others stood in the way of this even going on the ballot for voters to have a choice on. At the end of the day, the people paying taxes should be the people making decisions about who serves in positions and what those positions are, in general government structure stuff. When you align with the will of the community, more often than not, good things happen. When government that exists to serve the community and their citizens and taxpayers becomes misaligned with the will of their boss, of the citizens, usually bad things happen. And that's where government gets off track in their service to the community. So there is an opportunity on November 3rd for voters not to fix things as it relates to me, but let's learn as a community, there's a loophole in county government. And we went out to the voters, got signatures, and are putting it before the voters and saying, what do you think? Do you want to close this loophole where a group of politicos can change a countywide elected official's job after you vote to put him or her there in the future? This is not about personalities. I'm not going to be on the ballot November 3rd, and I'm not running again. So this is about the next chairman, and this is about the next opportunity for the community to vote in and have their will carried out between elections. So when you talk about the current form of government, the county board basically is in charge of the administration, and they are the executive and the legislative arms of county government. If the community votes yes for the county executive, you would put the county board in a legislative lane. They'd still have total control over approving the budget and policy, but they would stay out of the managerial side, the administration leadership side, and you would have basic branches of government, kind of like what we learned about in 7th grade government class. What happens when things are as perverse as they've been at the county? Again, I went in to clean up and reform county government. 2 years in, we won a reform award by the most respected good government organization in the state. That's never happened in county government before, being recognized for reform. What are some of the reforms we went in and changed immediately? We put in a nepotism policy, because in county government, in an organization, a publicly funded organization in 2016 and in 2020, you shouldn't be hiring as your number one criteria your friends and family into all these positions. If the number one criteria is that's your brother, sister, uncle, or cousin, you're going to, in public government and in public service, probably not be hiring the best people all the time when you think about an organization the size and scale of county government. I know we made some people upset, but we came in and had a nepotism policy put in right away. We came in and reformed how we did appointments. We didn't let them happen in back rooms anymore. When an elected official vacated an office midterm, we had a very public process. We brought in anybody that wanted to apply for that position to be appointed to it, and we invited in the media, the community, all board members. Ultimately, I made a recommendation, the board approved. And we took on some tough things on our budget. There's no easy answers, but we came in to reform county government. We believe that was attempted to be blocked by a group of individuals that really wanted to focus more on power grabs than on governing and on reforming county government. Our community has been cheated the last 2 years. Winnebago County Board has had all of the power. They are in charge of every legislative and administrative decision. And when you look at the scoreboard the last 2 years, since they've taken all the power away from the chief elected official, the chairman, the results are pretty clear that they have struggled, they have stumbled, that jobs aren't getting done, work isn't getting done, there's more dysfunction, not less, there's more fighting, there's not less, and there's less focus, not more. And that's really frustrating. Let me give you a specific example of where some of the dysfunction in county government can play out. One was around a very hotly debated economic development project. And when you're talking $1 million or $2 million, that's worth having some serious discussions about when you're spending other people's money. The project that was being submitted was a good thing for a municipality. It wasn't for something a county government should get involved in supporting with incentives. And how we did business, unfortunately, at that time 2 years ago, that led to a lot of fighting was, the cousin of a board member was on the other side of the deal. The uncle of a board member was the lawyer on the other side of the deal. The second cousin of a board member was the developer on the other side of the deal. You had the developer pressuring one of the board members over outside business being threatened or being talked about going away if there wasn't a change in that person's vote. The focus wasn't on best practice in economic development incentives. It was focused on things other than that. And that became a flashpoint. And unfortunately, we spent money on something the county shouldn't have spent money on. The deal was going to happen regardless of whether the county partnered. But what we demonstrated to the community is if you're part of a family connection to the county board, we'll do things one way. If you're not, we'll do things another. And I think that's a very dangerous precedent. And to say that in retaliation for me pushing back on that a little bit, to take away part or most of my job as retaliation, that's a problem. I'll give you another example of really a low point in watching bad county politics play out is we came in and reformed how we did appointments at the county. So if, in the outside chance, an elected official, like the county clerk or a state's attorney, left their elected position midterm, we have to fill that with an appointed position till the next available time for the voters to vote somebody in. And so what we saw was we came in and we stopped doing it in the back room. We started doing it in front of the camera, in front of the media, in front of the community. We invited people to submit their resumes. We interviewed them publicly in a public meeting. I made a recommendation to the board. The board would approve or disapprove of it. That's exactly what happened when the county clerk left midterm in the beginning of 2018. We talk about appointments. We kind of moved the whole doing it in the back room to moving it into the public eye. If we are going to replace folks who were elected publicly with an appointed position for a short period of time, we need to do it in a different way than has always been done in county government. We did that for the county clerk and appointed an outstanding replacement when Clerk Mullins left. Then came the state's attorney, running for judge, and Joe Briscato became an elected judge, so he had to leave the state's attorney position at the end of 2018. And all this is going on with kind of power grab stuff and some of the taking away power discussions behind the scenes. Well, we had this state's attorney thing. Well, 8 or 9 people applied to replace the sitting state's attorney who got elected judge. Interesting aside, the state's attorney is the lawyer for the county board and for the county chairman, for the county administration. And I was really disappointed. And what creates dysfunction is it really is an insight into county politics. So while we had a state's attorney who's a politically, elected, partisan elected state's attorney running for judge, he went to some churches and saying, hey, a vote for me for judge is a vote for this other person for state's attorney. And that's really not how elections go. You vote for one person. And little did I know that these types of conversations were going on behind the scenes. But then as my lawyer, he's advising me, hey, Frank, it's your appointment. I'm staying out of any appointment stuff. And, county politics is so messed up. I had my lawyer lying to me. And it created a situation where we appointed the most qualified person who applied. But then behind the scenes, there was incredible political pressure to go along with what somebody who made some promises on his way out the door, state's attorney, had promised. And so it turned into a little bit of a political battle. The board wound up voting down my recommendation and went with another. I don't believe that person was the most qualified, but that's what the board wanted. That's what they got. That's actually how government should work, by the way, is when the board has the final say, they could vote yes or no. Do I like some of the nasty politics that I think took the focus off of doing the best for the people? Yes. However, at the end of the day, they got the final say. When they disagree with the recommendation, as they rarely did in our first 2 years, they made a decision then to kind of remove me from the ability to even be part of the process of recommending policy, the process of recommending budget. And so it was out of a retaliation of that really became a problem in terms of governance, and that's where we undercut the will of the voters. When you look at this tying back to the county executive, it's going to keep coming back to that because voters have an opportunity on November 3rd to do something about what is a very broken way of doing business. If you are going to punish an elected official for having a position different than your own, when he ran on a change agenda in the first place, you're going to wind up with a future chairman that's going to comply with what you want, not be committed to what's in the best interest of the community. Another example of where I saw, I think everything I'm talking about ties back to the need to support the county executive form of government on November 3rd, because that would protect the next chairman or the chairman after that if he or she wants to make a recommendation that requires board approval, that if they disagree, they just merely vote no instead of trying to run the guy out of the job that he or she has. And so another example was when we had board member Gary Jury and board member Joe Hoffman basically saying that if we didn't go with the friend of one of the board members to hire him to be the head of our animal services department, that we know how to make people's lives miserable. And that was a direct threat at me, and shortly thereafter they attempted to make my life miserable with all these ordinance changes, but we wound up recommending and pushing through the most qualified candidate. And it was a battle, but at the same time, look how much progress we made the last 2 years in that particular area, because we just focused on doing the right thing for the community versus kind of the friends and family type approach. Another example is when board member Jim Webster came to me a week after we voted to hire a lobbyist, and that was board supported vote. Jim came to me and said he wanted to have us reconsider that and hire his buddy who was a former retired state rep. And when I informed him that not only did I want the direction we were going, but the board supported it. He actually got in my face in my office, and guess what happened that night? I was informed that some on the board wanted to make an ordinance change to the job of chairman. And so when we have policy discussions, we want our community to be in charge of putting the people into the positions that they're in, to have policy discussions, and then regardless of how they play out, that your job's not basically eliminated if there's some policy disagreement. Absolutely wrong. So we got to the point where we had 14 plus attempted changes to my job over the span of just a couple of years. That began just before I was elected and really kind of ran through March of 2019. So not even 4 full years, but about 3.25 years of every couple weeks wondering what change are folks who are going to bring in against you to eliminate you from a job you're elected by the citizens of this community. I talked about the fact that I got elected in November of 2016 on a reform agenda after a 14-month campaign. And on the eve of being elected, there was already attempted changes by board members to the job. Literally, as it looked like I was going to win, they're attempting to kind of do a switch of what the job would be to undermine my ability to participate in the process. What did I come into? Let me tell you about my first month as chairman. First thing I saw was that I had to renegotiate an agreement with a developer in town that was about to be given a 10-year no-interest loan by county government on a repayment plan. I also saw the outgoing chairman and a county board member who's very active in the Republican Central Committee after he got voted off the county board. They had given an organization in town a chunk of money from their economic development project fund, and this particular board member, who was no fan of mine, was arranging for a bit. He was attempting to arrange to do the marketing for the company at the very same time the county, and through his vote, they were giving an organization money. And when you're involved in discussions on more than one side of the table, that usually spells problems, and you're focused more on helping yourself than you are on serving the community and making sure you get ROI in everything you do. That was very eye-opening to me that, a board and a board member that was handing out government incentives and government project money was also involved on trying to, in his personal and professional life, line up a business deal on the other side of it, was very disconcerting to me. It affirmed what I believed was true about the way business was being done at the county. So it came as no surprise that some were not thrilled that I was there in the first place. And at the end of the day, here's the big picture, is county chairmen come and go. But every 4 years, if we want accountable government where the right people are involved at the right time in the right way, we have to respect the will of voters. And voters, more often than not, will get it right. And if they don't, they'll get it right that 4 years later and clean it up. And the more we empower our voters, and that's the key to the county executive. I like the idea that the boss or the voter of Winnebago County gets to choose the chief elected of the county administration to a job that cannot change if we go with the county executive, meaning the county board can't get mad and change the chairman duties because their feelings got hurt, they're not happy with who won, they disagreed one time. That is a key factor to ensuring good government, is that we could prevent this from happening again. And as we go forward, that's going to become more important because the core issues facing our community, tough budgets, need for public safety, the need to grow our tax base, recruit and attract businesses and young professionals, all of the core issues driving community change are going to be there. We have to do business better. I went in there to be part of forward movement at the county, and the way in which some people attempted to thwart change, instead of trying to win on election day at the ballot box, using the board floor to settle political scores, it's an unfortunate way. On November 3rd, people can close that loophole, go with the county executive. Then the voters of Winnebago County are going to be empowered to choose their chief elected of the administration, and also they will continue to be able to pick their district county board members. So then voters will know they're going to send a specific person to do a specific job in the county administration as the chief elected, and a specific person to do the county board legislative job that cannot change midterm. And I think that'll create stability and accountability in county government, something that we've been, quite frankly, been missing. Let's talk about what happens if we don't change the structure of county government and go with the county executive on November 3rd. I think you're going to wind up with a county-wide elected official position in the chairman position that is inconsequential to the forward movement of our community. It is going to be based on compliance with the board and that commitment to serving our community, because you would not dare bring forward a bold solution to one of our big problems, because you might upset somebody or hurt somebody's feelings to the point where they'll change your job again. So we do not want to have positions that are purely political positions. Unfortunately, through the actions of the county board, that's what we've made the chairman position. A yes vote for the county executive puts that back into a governance position. You're the chief elected of the administration. You can bring forward solutions to problems, attempt to get consensus around those solutions without fear of losing your job midterm or having it changed 14 or so times out of political retribution. It would place the county board in a legislative lane where they can focus on approving and amending recommendations, but not trying to manage and have 20 people running around trying to be the chairman at one time. When you look at a guy like a Fred Westcott, it's time for change. Our community has not changed fast enough. County government has more levers and barriers to change than probably any other form of government in the region. And so we've attracted people that don't like change in their various roles. And there's a better option on the ballot. It's time for Fred to go. And it's time for, actually, in 2022, looking ahead, every county board member is up for re-election in 2022, because that's what happens every 10 years after the census. And so what I would recommend, you vote yes for the county executive, get some normalcy and some functionality in the structure of county government, and then evaluate these county board members as a whole. Each of them will be up in 2022. And when you get the right structure in 2020, followed with perhaps some additional upgrades in county board members, we need our business community to get more engaged in filling these seats, like you see in many other communities. And that's not a Republican thing or a Democrat thing. That's just about people that are deeply committed to the forward movement of our community. They want to make decisions based on best practices and best practice around the country, and bringing those ideas here to Winnebago County. So, again, let's talk about what really matters. Is that it's not that somebody that went through a 14-month campaign and got elected had his job change fundamentally. It's that the voters who put him there had their will ignored by other elected officials called the county board. I believe that borders on a voter rights, a constitutional voter rights violation. When you look at the job of chairman, they set it up kind of weird back just when I was out of high school in 1992. They created by ordinance something that normally you go out to the voters and ask. They created the chairman job by ordinance, which means the county board is in charge of the ordinance piece. And so what happened since 1992 till basically more recently when I got elected is the job was largely the same. It was the chief elected of the administration. Everybody that went to vote in 2016 knew what the job was. And so then they were informed by knowing what the job was, who to put in that job to represent them. And now that the job is so fundamentally changed, we believe that the voter rights have been stepped on and ignored and trampled, and that's a basic constitutional right. I think that's fundamentally wrong. That flies in the face of the values of our community. regardless of who the chairman is, regardless of what office we're even talking about. That is not how communities that are finding success are doing business. That is not how communities that are aligned and have government entities that are aligned with the will of the people, how they're doing business. When you talk about county politics, I remember about 2 or 3 months in, it came back to me that board member Gary Jury said, Haney won. We're going to give him a few months honeymoon, and then we're going to take over. And that's exactly what you saw politically is in reaction to an election outcome that was not preferred by the old guard of the county and in really our local political establishment, is you saw people giving it a few months and then going to work on attempting to eliminate the person's ability to affect change that they didn't want there in the first place. That is the same person who sat there just a few years later and said, when we don't get what we want, we know how to make people's lives miserable. Then he came to me on the eve of the vote on his family members' economic development project they were pushing and said, Frank, you support this, all your political problems will go away. You'll have all the money you need for re-election, and you won't have any problems here going forward. And I remember sitting there, and it was such a crystallizing moment for me, saying, well, you could choose path A, and it's the easy path, and it would mean that right now I would be on the ballot and I'd be unopposed, and it would be a cakewalk to a re-election, and an easier ride. Or we could do what is the principal thing. It is based on best practices in county government. It's going to piss off some of the old guard, but if we're going to do business based on this, when we were sent in here by voters of this community, we're going to sell ourselves short long term. And that's not why I ran. That doesn't mean I'm perfect, but what it does mean is that we need a hell of a lot more people that are going to choose that B path, not going down that road of basically being bought off or arm twisted in a manner that cheats the process of good government. One of the things that is a symbol of the dysfunction of our county board is this latest round of appointments to community boards. So the county, Winnebago County, appoints members of the community to various community boards, no different than the city of Rockford does to various boards as well. And back, we're at about the 100-day mark now. 100 days ago, I brought to the board for the first time the appointment of 4 outstanding, highly qualified, high character, highly accomplished individuals who happen to be minority appointments to various community boards. One to the Airport Authority, one to the Community Action Agency, one to the Housing Authority, and one to the Crime Commission of Winnebago County. And again, these are 4 individuals who, if you just looked at the resume and you didn't look at their profile picture, you'd say, man, based on the words on this resume and the accomplishments, these folks could serve on any board in this community, and they're so highly accomplished, they're kind of, it's hard to question them. And it's ironic that a few of these folks actually are in the different political party than I am, and none of them are close personal friends, but they're people who are high character and who I think, if you knew them and you knew their story and you knew their background, you knew their accomplishments, you'd be very proud to support them. And our county board, out of vindictiveness, just to stymie forward progress, has tabled the voting on these 4 individuals and won't even take a vote on them. And so one month we had a county board member complaining that we weren't appointing more individuals of color to various boards, and we've made tremendous progress on that front over the last 3.5 years. But I did say, hey, next month we're coming in with some appointments, and I think you're going to be really excited about the quality of these individuals. And so we bring that forward, and the county board doesn't vote them down or vote one of them down, but then do the work of the people and vote on the rest of them. They just table it. And they said, well, we don't want Haney to get a win. And that's not what this is about. Is actually, I told the county board previously, hey, I have some appointments that are going to be coming forward. I'm going to bring them to you for approval of discussion. And I haven't heard one credible reason why any of these folks shouldn't be voted on, much less voted in an affirmative manner. And normally, when you have a county board or a city of Rockford appointment, I mean, this is basic, routine, boring business. But the county board has wanted to be, eliminate basically the chairman job to the point where we're turning basic, ordinary appointments that should be not controversial into like hyper political Supreme Court appointments. And we've politicized this process to the point where we're 100 days since even mentioning these four folks publicly, all of which would make the organizations that they'd be serving on better in a short period of time. And they refuse to do the job that they were elected to do because there's so much animus towards an outside person who got elected by the people to do a particular job for a particular period of time. And I think that's a sad commentary that's where we're at right now. So if we're to wrap this up, I think that it comes down to this, is that in 2016, voters could have voted for the status quo, or they could have voted for reform. And you know what they chose was a new direction in reform in county government. It was a 14-month campaign, and it was real clear what we were going to do when we went in there. And what you've seen play out with the 14 attempted changes to the job of a chief elected official of the administration, the chairman, through retaliation, has been really the voters of Winnebago County being given the finger by the county board. This is not a power struggle between the chairman and the county board. This is a power struggle between the county board and the citizens of this community. Either your vote matters or it doesn't. And if you, on November 3rd, want it to count in the future every single time, then we need you to vote for the county executive. Another thing is there's an opportunity to vote out of office, a couple board members that have really disqualified themselves through their behavior. And one of them is Fred Westcott, unfortunately. Fred has been quick to ask myself and others to step down over a very simple policy disagreement, while being on the wrong side of those issues. And Fred's behavior, his lack of depth of understanding of our budget, his disinterest in basic facts around what his job is, and the idea that somebody who has also served on the Winnebago County Housing Authority for over 20 years is so offended at the idea that we would make room for new leadership in that position. If that is the direction we go, it's hard to have positive outcomes. Fred is absolutely, he needs to go, and he has made governing not about doing your homework and reading the packet and studying the budget, but really about hurt feelings and doing everything he can to resist positive change. So what's the best way forward? Number one, vote yes for the county executive, in my opinion. Two, is look at some of these key county board races. There's going to be a big change with the Dave Fiducia getting voted out of office. I think that's absolutely tremendous for county government. Another is on November 3rd, people get to choose whether or not longtime board member Fred Westcott is retained, and I hope he's not. He at every turn has gone out of his way to focus on the wrong things, has come to represent the old guard in county politics, has worked harder to prevent reform than just about every other county board member over the course of the last 2 years. It doesn't mean that at the end of the day he's a terrible guy in his personal life. It just means from a governance standpoint there's a much better option on the ballot. So I'm asked, since my term as chairman is coming to an end, what's next for me? I'm still I'm looking forward to stepping out of public service back into the private sector in one form or another, and figuring that out, looking ahead to a little more time with family, and really excited about that. I'm really proud of some of the changes we were able to make, especially early on at the county. I'm also very proud that compared to 4 years ago, this community is now on notice. You're better informed about what's going on in the dysfunction of county government. I've had people explain county government this way to me. They said, you know, Frank, before you got there, I was drinking Winnebago County water. It's like a well of water in county government. And now, you know, things unfortunately a little stirred up and turbulent, but now we see all this stuff that's floated to the top in a more transparent way. We don't like what we're drinking. So now we know there's an issue or two or three. We have to change it. And it's incumbent upon the community to own that change. Don't leave it to a bunch of political people, whether they're Democrat or Republican, to fix things that really should be falling to citizens to fix. The style of government, that's why the county executive makes sense to the community. A couple of county board members that don't want change and want all the power, it may not make sense to them, but it does make sense to this community, regardless of who they put in that seat in the future. And we want to be attracting to the chief elected of the administration, you know, A-level executives in the future. We will not do that with the current structure. So I would challenge the community to own the piece of transformation that is uniquely on them. Put better people in these seats, in these county board seats. Fix the structure that has allowed a bunch of political people focus solely on their own power to pervert the will of voters. And you have the opportunity to change that. As far as what's ahead for me, I'm looking forward to a little more time with family. I'm looking forward to going back into the private sector, which was always my goal. I didn't want to do this forever, but at the same time, I think there's when we look ahead to the next person, I want that person empowered to be bold and to lead this community and to be part of the leadership of our community, not a sideshow, not written out of the org chart if someone happens to disagree with them. Regardless of who the next chairman is, we need that chairman to have the ability to affect change, and a county board that has to approve things but can't actually eliminate a person while in office. So I'm excited for the future, but there's work to be done on November 3rd, and there's work to be done in the future. Yeah, hi, this is Frank Haney again, Winnebago County Board Chairman. I'm in my final several weeks as chairman here. I want to thank 662 Online for giving me the opportunity to talk here one of the final times to the community and talk about really my experience, why I decided to run for chairman, some of the progress we made, but also some of the incredible challenges that we faced by some really messed up politics that we still have to fix as we go forward. And I want to thank you, thank 662 Online one more time, and also encourage you to watch what we've been talking about. Thank you.